Hi, Andrea. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Well, I am excited to talk about eczema. I think I was telling you before we got on that I have had a history of eczema. One of my son had eczema as a baby, and way back then, I didn't know all the things I know now in order to get that to go down. So many options that were given are steroid creams and things like that really aren't solving the problem. So I'm excited to talk about this topic today. Before we get into it, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and how you got to be an eczema expert?
Sure. My name is Andrea McHugh, and I host the
I
Eczema
can't
Kids
hear
pod.
you.
Oh, you can't?
Mm-mm.
Well, that's fun. Let's see.
It was mine. Yep, sorry about that. We'll just cut it right out. It was
Okay,
my computer for some reason that sound shifted. So if you could just start with like how you got into it, I'll just cut that.
sure, sure, sure. Yeah. Well, hi, my name is Andrea McHugh. I'm the founder of the Eczema Kids brand and host of the Eczema Kids podcast. And there we focus on natural healing and comfort from eczema. And, I transformed from a conventional dental professional to what people would say is a crunchy mama of four now. And our family's journey through eczema, we're just one of those classic make your mess your message people because our journey through eczema was so traumatic and intense. It just turned into this mission for, healthier, happier childhoods. And so now we offer a course and skincare and all the things to help people resolve this condition naturally because I was in your exact same boat. And it sounds like you were dealing with this like a while ago. And for me, the traditional, allopathic approach hasn't changed a whole bunch. I took my two kids at the time. I have four now, but they were two and just newborn, and they both suddenly just came down with severe eczema. It was so strange, and it was my first time dealing with this, and I brought them in. I was like, "Wow, this is really bad," and they're like, "Yeah, this is really bad." I'm like, "I know, that's why I'm here." And they gave me two, prescriptions and for steroids, and they said you have to put on gloves yourself to use these, but use these both, and set them up on bleach baths. And that was basically, the direction that I was given. And I didn't feel comfortable with that. And like I said, it just fueled my mission to go down a different path. And now I help others do the same.
Yeah, I mean that is when you're saying they're telling you you have to put this on your baby, but you have to put gloves on in order to do it. You're like, I wonder if that's something that I want to do. But we're just those are the tools we're given, and you're desperate sometimes because your child's suffering or you're suffering, and you're just gonna do it. My problem is also that my eczema, when it comes up, it will come right on my face. So it's right around my eyes and you can see it. So you need to it's always like, "Oh, great, what's going on here?" And I know some of the things that I've learned in the gut connection and all of that and food sensitivities and everything. So I'm excited to jump into some of this. So let's get into your action plan for how you reverse eczema.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry, excuse me. Sorry. Okay. So yeah, in my protocol, we start with diet and nutrition because that's the biggest difference that we can make as parents. Like we're the ones doing the grocery shopping and bringing everything into the house. And if you start with just serving your children and your family in general digestible food, you can make a world of difference there because eczema, it appears on the outside, but it's really a reflection of what's going on the inside. And unfortunately, what's happening on the inside, in my belief, and I am not a doctor like you, I am just a mama who has been through the trenches and helped other people through it. But there's like definitely some digestive problems. There's definitely some fat assimilation problems. There's the microbiome, things are off there, and lymph stagnation and liver stagnation. And really, what you're feeding them day in and day out can make a big difference in all of those systems and ultimately bring about a big change. But that's where we start because, like I said, it's significant.
And so, what are some of the things when you're starting that, like with an eczema specific diet that you're having people start? Where do you start there?
Mhm. Everything is anti-inflammatory. It's all whole, unprocessed foods is the biggest change. You really any processed food, one, it's not digestible, but two, for our little eczema friends, there's usually an ingredient or two in there that's just not going to work for them. And I found that foods that induce heat within the body, because eczema is this kind of like heat related condition. And so things that have vinegar in it, or anything that's a yeast product like vinegar, or anything fermented, even anything high in histamines like bone broth, and these are all healthy foods. Like these are all really, really good things for other people to eat. But when you're recovering from eczema, it's just not within your best interest for a short while. And then, of course, like it makes it worthwhile to take out those allergens, nuts and eggs. Like those things are classic textbook eczema triggers. And eating seasonally makes a really big difference, because that helps your microbiome, because then you're putting in the right microbes from the right seasons into your gut, and that helps your body like assimilate those nutrients. Cooking everything is a really big deal, because even raw kale, like that would be a healthy food, but that's not digestible, so it's not healthy. You really are what you digest. So things like that to keep in mind, and cooking everything in recognizable fats, like ghee and coconut oil and olive oil, and be mindful of the smoke points of all those things so they don't turn rancid.
Hmm. Yeah,
Those
it's
are,
funny when you were mentioning them, I was sitting because you were saying, fermented and the so I like some of the food and the bone broth and whatever. I'm like, well, those are all histamine foods. So, and that's where I actually have done am in the process of recording a summit for people, because histamine intolerance is such a huge issue that is behind a lot of things people aren't realizing. So some of these things that people are actually told to eat, bone broth, fermented foods, things that are healthy, if you have histamine issues, that can just backfire because you're not actually breaking down the histamine. So when we're seeing this eczema type reaction, we can also often relate that to histamine and even specific histamine microbes and all of those things. So those are some good points to bring up.
yeah, yeah. And it's so counterintuitive and against all the advice that you would
Mhm.
receive in most books and online, but I really found it to be helpful in this case.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to create that awareness that histamine can be an issue for a lot of the things that you're feeling and you're not even realizing or thinking it's there. I often see like, oh, this is the connection for all of these different symptoms. One of them is eczema. Another thing that I have found, for me personally, and can see this, is specific food sensitivities. So one of the tricky parts is that when you're limiting foods, I see that if you're not totally eliminating the food, you can still have some antibodies. So, for me, for an example, I was eating dairy just every once in a while. And when I work with people, they'll say, well, I don't eat much of it, or I only eat it every few weeks, or I almost cut it out. But the problem is when you're never fully eliminating, you're still having some of those antibodies and they're never going the full way down. So you still can get the eczema to come back even if you're not eating it very often. And I think that that's tricky because sometimes people think, oh, it's not that food because I hardly ever eat that food, but the antibodies last like long enough that you still can be getting reactions. Do you see that too?
Yeah. Yeah. So sorry.
That's okay.
Yes.
We can cut it. That's
Thank
totally
you.
fine. Yeah,
Thanks.
absolutely.
Yes, I really see that. And when I was nursing my baby who had severe, severe eczema, I mean, I could just directly see it. It's like, oh, I eat food A. And you could just directly see it on her skin, like later that day or even the next day. It's just immediate. And this is how I found out things like bone broth and ferments, weren't going to work. Like healthy foods, like I wasn't eating Cheetos and it's like, oh yeah, that's not so good for her. But um, and I'm sorry, wait, what was the question?
Oh, do you see if people don't pull the foods
Oh,
fully out? Yeah.
thank you. So yeah, you do have to be really strict about it. And I don't like to use that word, but you do have to follow a pretty stringent protocol for a short while. And it's not that stringent. And what it means is it's like all, animal proteins that are cooked according to like digestible standards, and fruits and vegetables and gluten-free grains that are properly prepared, which means like soaking them in an acid and then ideally cooking them in an Instapot or a pressure cooker so that it takes down the phytonutrients and the lectins. And also beans, the same thing. If you soak them, cook them in an Instapot, take down those lectins and the phytonutrients, make it digestible. So it really is an abundance of food. Like there's a lot out there. There's not an abundance of processed food that's like allowed on the protocol. But yes, you do need to maintain those boundaries while you're actively healing. Like if you were to give this a good go for 2 or 3 months, you will see drastic changes. But in that time, you'll see the changes happening first, but in that time, you're healing and sealing the gut. So they aren't so reactive to everything, because the end goal is not to avoid almonds for life. It's to be able to have everything in moderation, to be able to go to birthday parties and partake in the cake and the pizza. Like that's where we're at now, to go out to eat on a Friday night, and that's fine. But if you do it 3 times in a row, then that's when you come into trouble. So that's where I want to be. That's where I want my clients to be.
Mhm. Yes, yeah, and I agree. I never, my goal was never to have full elimination forever, because we do want to have a wide variety. I do find that it's sometimes, while we're working on rebalancing the microbiome and, building up the healthy bacteria, you're right, sealing the gut lining, doing all of those things, we do need to sometimes pull that food out completely to see the major difference, to see that decreased inflammation, and then reintroduce it at a point where, okay, we're not reacting to that food anymore, because the antibody have a 23-day half-life. So after about 23 days, those antibodies are going to be half of them are gone, and then another 23 days, another half. And then, so we just need to get the antibodies out of the system before we're reintroducing. And sometimes when we do that and then we're not doing it long enough, or, and that's why people say, okay, well, I gave it up for 2 weeks, you can't tell a difference
It's not going to
necessarily.
work. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. Can you tell us a little bit, because you mentioned the lectins and the anti-nutrients, and I think that that's something not a lot of people know about. So can we talk a little bit about that?
Mm-hmm. I'm so sorry. Just one more time.
That's okay.
Okay, I'm going to take a sip of water.
Yeah,
And it's
that
not
no, yeah,
tissue.
so that's
So sorry. Okay. Yeah, so lectins is a really big piece. And I heard a lot about this when I was doing my research. Dr. Gundry talks a lot about this. And also the person that wrote Fiber Fueled was a really good book for me. But and ancient cultures understood this. But the shell, if you were to buy bulk beans, like it's rock hard, right? Like obviously it's not fit for consumption. And to me, it's just like that, as not a trade dietitian or doctor, is like, okay, clearly a lot needs to happen to this food before I can eat it. So soaking, and which isn't a big deal. Like if you just soak it overnight in a big, I have those 64-ounce mason jars with an acid, if it's a grain, and then I put like minerals into the water for all the legumes I soak. Do that overnight, put it through a colander the next day, like anytime the next day, whenever you're ready to cook it, and then put it in the Instapot with like 2 inches of water over it. For me, it's also just the fastest and easiest way to cook, and then it's also the healthiest.
yes. Okay, well, great. Now, let's move beyond diet a little bit and see what other tricks do you have for helping besides diet?
Yeah. I mean, so simultaneously, step two is dealing with the symptoms. Like we're in the here and now, and if your kid is red and itchy, this is certainly something that you're likely already addressing now, and maybe not with the results that you're hoping for. But I was really able to see a difference in utilizing herbal oils. So that's what I make now, and I sell those to my clients, and it's the lipophilic qualities, like fat likes fat. So if you're able to put infused herbs in onto your skin, herbs that help with lymph flow, herbs that help with detoxification, herbs that help with anti-inflammatory, herbs that help with even moisturization, if you put that onto their bodies, like before a bath or a shower, or if they're old enough, then they can do this themselves. And then not only helps with like a moisture barrier and rebuilding the skin microbiome and rebalancing the skin microbiome, but it also helps protect them from the water from the bath or the shower, hard water or hot water. All those things really make a difference for, if you have this weakened skin barrier, which of course anyone with eczema does. So you start with that and then do your bath and shower. And ideally, if you can take a bath and put in baking soda and Epsom salts, that really helps with detoxification. And then you're also in doing both those things, the herbal oil and in a nice, like relaxing bath, if you can put in some ragweed free essential oils in there, all of that's helping like rebalance the nervous system as well. And that all of that has healing effects. And then we have an anti-itch spray, which helps put more anti-inflammatory herbs onto the skin. Also, just another layer of moisturization. It's got these Chinese herb blend that also combats staph, because everyone with eczema has a higher staph count on their skin. And then let that dry. It's just like a really quick spray. And then follow that up with like a deeply nutritive tallow cream. And that's what we do because it's bioavailable. It helps with, vitamins A, D, E, and K, like all these things that they're likely already deficient in. And if needed, if that's where you're at, then follow that up with wet wrapping, and that's just like a strategy that you can use in the here and now that's helpful just if your child's not able to sleep because of incessant itching.
Hmm. So could you tell us some of the herbs that you're using?
hmm I use marshmallow root, and that helps draw in the moisture. I use madder root, that helps move the lymph. Ginger, because it's anti-inflammatory. It's a lot like turmeric, but turmeric is so staining. I used to used to use it on my kids, and everything was yellow, and I figured it was a fair trade-off, but it's harder now. And then we also use amalaki because that's really high in vitamin C.
Okay. And then do you put those in a carrier? Do you mix those then in a carrier oil?
hmm Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, our oil is infused with jojoba oil is the carrier oil because it isn't too high in oleic acid, which can help, like that's what olive oil is, and that sometimes weathers down the skin barrier, and that we're looking obviously for the opposite effect. And so jojoba oil is a really anti-allergenic carrier. That's a
Okay.
lot like our skin's natural sebum.
Okay. So you're infusing those herbs into the oil and then putting that oil on the skin to calm down the active eczema.
Correct.
Okay. While we're working on the diet, the microbiome, all of those other things, because that is, and that's what the steroids will do. So, people will say, well, the steroids make it go away. The steroids are making it go away because they're bringing the inflammation down. And as soon as you pull the steroid off, the inflammation comes back because you've never actually addressed why you're inflamed. So, I'm always focusing on, okay, we need to know why we're inflamed, why we're getting the eczema. But we also, I totally understand you're uncomfortable and you need something right now. So having something like that where you're like, okay, I can do it in a natural herbal way rather than putting something on that's going to affect my body in so many other negative ways, that is important.
Yeah, because we're just not about band-aiding, like
Hmm.
exactly like you said. I considered the steroids. I mean, I really did
Hmm.
because there were some hard nights. I mean,
Hmm.
months of hard nights, and people around me were like, my parents and my husband's parents were like, "What are you doing? Like, you have to put these on. Like, this is crazy." But I'm glad we held out because, yeah, like you said, once you do take away the steroids, a lot of my clients are dealing with topical steroid withdrawal, and in my experience, things come back tenfold.
Hmm. And so then you're okay. So you're using the oil, the herbal infused oil, and then you're doing the Epsom salt baths with the baking soda. And what essential oils do you use when you're doing the baths?
If ragweed is okay, just calming oils like lavender is fine. Otherwise, there's cedarwood or sandalwood. There's so many just
Mhm.
nice calming.
Okay, so we're
pleasant
looking
oils.
more calming for that, for the like the
Yeah,
bath time oils.
yeah.
Okay, so
And
that's
they
more
also
just for
serve,
relaxation.
yeah, and they also have like antiseptic properties as well,
Mhm.
to help with
Yes.
the reason that you're taking the bath in the first place.
Okay, yeah. What would be the next step?
Yeah, and then you're going to want to decrease environmental triggers with home modifications. So this is when you look into water and air and mold and EMFs, and by making your home like where your kid spends most of their time, especially when you're including the sleeping hours, if you can make that into a less inflammatory experience, they will start to heal.
Yes. Yep. Their histamine levels will start will go down because, we our mast cells start to trigger from mold and environment and all of those things. So we start to get that overreaction a lot of times from the mast cells where we're releasing more histamine and you're getting more of these type reactions. So anything you can do to bring that down is yes, definitely beneficial.
You
Yeah.
get
And
it.
yes, anything else that you would like to share in your process?
Yeah, and then we do supplements because once you get the steps 1 through 3 down, you'll be in a much better place, and then you can start to add if you want to start to fill in those nutritional gaps and help their detox pathways and also increase their levels of glutathione, which is your number one liver enzyme and your number one detoxification molecule. And so that all helps. And then lastly, I recommend health testing because then if you're at that point and you're still seeing a little something, and it'll be significantly better. But if you're still seeing something and you've done all those things, then there might be a little something that you're overlooking. And then that's when I get into IgG and stool, and there's like a sequence, but you don't have to do it all at once. And I don't recommend you doing it in the beginning when they are so activated because they're reacting to everything, as you can see, as exhibited by the eczema. And so when you spend thousands of dollars and then you get these test results back that are lit up like a Christmas tree, like I found, in myself and just also in working with other people, they're scared to feed their kid anything, and it doesn't, it's a hard, expensive pill to swallow. So I like to do that at the end as an optional, ideally, non-existent step.
Hmm. Yeah, but I do see sometimes that until we get some of those specific foods out, that you could be eating such a healthy diet. And I mean, we're definitely working on histamines, definitely working on whole foods, natural foods, bring out the processed foods, all of that. But if somebody has a really strong food sensitivity and they're not eliminating that food, that can be like a secret trigger that and it's not for everyone. I agree with you. Like, not, I don't think everyone needs a food sensitivity test because depending on what you have going on, for sure. I don't do them for everyone, but for sometimes when we see something where, okay, this food is triggering you, or there's something that's triggering you, sometimes we can, until we pull that one food out or those three foods out or whatever we need to, we can't see a full difference. Do you
Mhm.
find that?
Yes, I agree 1000%. And that's why, we do it as the step 5. And then you can see those one or two foods. Like for us, like millet was a thing. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then, so instead of seeing a list of 20 things, it's like,
Yes.
just, yeah, one or two things popped out. And I was like, oh, okay, yes, that we are still consuming because it's a gluten-free grain or whatever, and I didn't realize like that she was having an issue with that. So no problem. I can omit that. And that proved to be much more helpful
Yeah.
than,
Okay.
yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Well, great. And you did mention too that you feel that skincare plays a role. So let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely does. And this is where we start as someone who's caring for, a child that's dealing with eczema. Is it just seems like an intuitive place to start. You have to put something on the skin because it's so angry and so red. And, in our case, it was bleeding, like it was horrible. So you have to address it. They're just so uncomfortable. But what I know to be true, like the herbal oils, it's derived from this ancient practice called Abhyanga, and the Ayurvedic sages recommend everyone do this as just a way to keep your body healthy, help your detox pathways, all of those things. Also soothe those nerve endings and calm yourself down. So it's a way for because it is a fat, the oils, it's a way to get those targeted nutrients past, into the tissues, and you bypass the broken digestive system and the broken, liver in a way, not broken, but it's a little bit stunted. You're bypassing those processes and is still circulating it throughout the body. And so I found it to be extremely effective in that way. One, it's not only relying on those subpar systems, but it's also helping them. It's also helping them recover. So
Hmm.
it's a double punch.
Yes, yeah. And once you feel better, I mean, it is amazing. I've seen people, like you're saying, bright red. You're talking about the point of bleeding, where, and I do. It's just one of those things that I wish more people understood how much of that comes from the gut, because when you do these things, when you do the gut healing protocols, when you're working on histamine issues, you're calming your immune system down, your skin just clears up. And I don't know that, unfortunately, when we're going to the doctor and we're talking about this, like we're saying, that's not mentioned. And so there's not an awareness all the time that how much of a connection is really there.
Yeah, yeah. And I like it's a hard standard, but I try not to put anything on their skin that you shouldn't eat because, like you said, that's how steroids work, right? It's like absorbed. The skin is your largest organ. It's absorbed into your bloodstream, and then all those chemicals are circulating throughout your whole body. Like, and that is the goal, right? That's how it is effective. But you can do the same with these natural remedies and things that actually do restore your tissues and restore your skin.
Yes, yeah. And we could get into a whole another conversation about what's in our skincare, but that's for another day because we're absorbing all of that too. So that's another topic. But thank you so much for giving us all this great information. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yeah, you can find all of our stuff. We have a Clear Skin Kids course and we have the Skin Comfort Trio all at eczemakids.com. I host the Eczema Kids podcast, and that's available anywhere that you listen to podcasts. If you want to step into our world, we have a Facebook group, Natural Eczema Solutions for Kids. And we also have some freebies on the site too to get you started with like a product guide and some healing seasonal foods that are good for our little eczema sufferers, and that is on the site as well. But I want kids to feel good in the skin that they're in, and I want families to feel energized and joyful and not have to carry this burden. So
Great. I love that. Feel good in the skin that you're in. I think we all
yes,
need to do that. Well,
yes,
thank
literally and
yes.
figuratively.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for joining us and have a great day, everyone.